everyone, it's Siobhan here. Today's video is a DIY, and in it I'm going to show you how to make a Christmas ornament that was sort of a tradition in my family. These are called walnut babies. They're kind of like little thumbelinas, and my mom made these up when I was small, and I have many memories of making these with her. So I thought that maybe today I would show you how to make them, and yeah, just gonna get on with it now.
For this project, you'll need a bag of walnuts that are still in their shells, and you'll also need a bag of dried lima beans. You'll need some plain cotton balls and some sort of spray or paint-on shellac. Other necessary tools include fine-tipped black pens or markers, a pair of scissors, and a glue gun and glue sticks. For trim, I'm using some white lace and some ivory beaded ribbon. You'll also need some ribbon that's about an inch wide and some thin cord for the dangle that'll hold the ornament to the tree. And lastly, you're going to need ribbon that's about 2 inches wide, and this is meant for the walnut baby blankets. Now, if you're like me and you don't have a nutcracker, you can break the walnuts by holding them down on a steady surface and knocking on them with the back of a soup spoon. Some of the nuts are easier to crack open than others, so it definitely pays to have a whole bag full as opposed to maybe a handful from the market. In some instances, they break into perfect halves, which is obviously the ideal, but then other times they break more awkwardly and you may only have one side that's left intact. As a Greek American, I grew up eating things like baklava, so this project is fun in the sense that it yields an ingredient that I've always loved, and you can see that I've put aside the contents of the shells for later. After cleaning out any leftover debris, you'll definitely need to lay some sort of tarp down on your work surface. Since I don't have anything like that, I resorted to a garbage bag, and actually that worked out pretty well. And with that in place, I laid the shells face down so that I could spray them with the shellac. While that dried, I began to work on my walnut baby bean faces. Now, I'm not a particularly skilled artist, so all I could manage were simple little smileys. On occasion, I draw in tiny eyelashes just to differentiate between boy and girl ornaments. And clearly that's not a necessary step, but my daughter likes when I make them half and half. Once the ink from the pen settled, I laid them out and sprayed them down with gloss too. I'd never used this brand of shellac before, and I gotta say it was super effective, but it destroyed my nail polish. In fact, I decided to take it off my fingers while the beans dried, and I wanted to share that in case any of you have fresh manicures. If you do, definitely wear some gloves. Moving forward, I turned on the glue gun and broke out the lace and beaded trim. You'll want to measure out and cut pieces that'll fit the circumference of the shell, and then of course use the glue to secure them into place. Today I've only got 2 types of lace, which I'm rotating back and forth with, but growing up my mom had baskets and baskets of cloth and scraps that she'd use for variety. I remember my brother and I naming them because they were all so different we were actually able to remember who was who. Just a cool little childhood Christmas memory side note. The cotton balls I had were for makeup removal and they were way too big, so I ended up having to cut them in half. Depending on what you have in your medicine cabinet, you may not need to do that. Now, the purpose of the cotton balls is to fill the hollow of the shell. In essence, you're making a soft little thumbelina mattress for the walnut baby. But first, you'll need to glue in your tree dangle. Again, I'm using 2 different types of ribbon. One is a sparkly gold with a thin wire through it, and this is great because it holds its shape very well. And the other is a copper-colored cord. I looked for silver this year, but I couldn't find any, so maybe next Christmas. Anyway, you can see that all I'm doing is gluing in this thin ribbon and then my half pieces of cotton balls. This next part was my favorite as a little girl because this is where you actually decorate the walnut beds for the walnut babies. I had 3 inch-wide ribbons that I rotated with, a gold, a sparkly green, and a deep red. These are for the pillows. All you need to do is snip off a small piece from the end and then glue it to the top of the cotton ball. Next comes the blanket, and I used 2 2-inch-wide Christmas ribbons for this, 1 plaid and 1 candy cane striped. As you can see, I cut a bit off the spool and I'm measuring and sizing it against the shell. Once it too was glued down, I snipped off the excess that had been hanging over the end, and then lastly, I laid one of my tiny bean faces onto the pillow. Now, if you don't have tons of ribbon lying around, you can definitely use pieces of fabric or even a few layers of tulle. In fact, there are all sorts of things you can add to this project for variety, like beads, glitter, or even seashells. You can also paint the shells before glossing them, and/or make the tree dangles as long or as short as you choose. And that's it for today. This is a really simple, easy, and child-friendly holiday DIY, one which I loved as a kid, and I hope you enjoyed it too.
Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you all have a really great holiday season, and Merry Christmas to all of you that celebrate.